What we did is we put together some shots of training that we wanted to show you at the beginning. Beginning with, this is our traditional get together and do the crew photo at the beginning of training. We have T-38s that we use for spaceflight readiness training, acrobatics, formation instruments. We also have a virtual reality lab. Here, Jim Kelly is doing robotics training with Charlie and Wendy. Soichi's in one of our simulators doing training with the camera for the ET photo. Here he is in the neutral buoyancy lab for EVA training. Steve is doing emergency egress training in the launch and entry suit, and also some tile repair. We did some trips down to the Cape. You see Andy here doing some training on the inspection. He was our lead on the inspection. And Wendy was our lead on transfer. This is the MPLM and transfer training. Her and Charlie worked on that together during the flight. Charlie also worked on the inspection. Here they are practicing the robot arm inspection, and this is the Discovery's wing leading edge that we inspected during the mission. We also inspected it pre-flight. Well, we finally made it to July 26th. This is the Astrovan, the walk out of crew quarters, our strap-in. This is the mid-deck. Wendy's getting in her seat. You see Andy in the background, Charlie's in the foreground. And this is the moment we've been waiting for. After many, many years of work, we got Discovery. A lot of tears in people's eyes when we finally lifted off. We feel the tower going better than accelerating through 100 miles an hour.
Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
A view of the crew in the upper left. We have a camera on our external tank. This is the LOX feed line. You see the ET over to the right, the booster on the left. The purpose of this camera was to watch any debris that might fall off. We've got the booster separation here. The cameras on the boosters actually follow them down to the ocean. And as you know, they're retrieved and reused. Back to the LOX feed line camera. First time we've flown a camera in this position, it worked quite well. Here's the roll to heads up. You can see the horizon in the background. That was about 6 minutes in the flight. Here we are about 8 minutes and 20 seconds. We have main engine cutoff. And shortly after that, you see the forward attach point. We're going to separate from the tank. The tank is going to fall away, and we will pitch around.
Houston Discovery, we have a good +X maneuver.
We'll pitch around and photograph the tank.
Of course, once we were on orbit, we had to configure for on-orbit operations, so we opened the payload bay doors to expose the radiators, and then got about going to work. One of the important objectives of this flight, and one of the great successes, was, of course, the inspection of the wing leading edge and the TPS, and to do that, we used the boom that you saw a moment ago, which carried sensors and cameras on it that enables to record these views of the wing leading edge and the nose cap to ensure that those regions have not suffered any damage during the launch phase. We also used the cameras on the robotic arm to inspect the crew cabin of the orbiter, as you see here, passing the hatchway, which just a day before we'd crawled through to ingress on the launch pad. Because we had these systems on board, we were able to survey the entire exterior of the orbiter and verify that it had good integrity and would be safe for entry at the end of the mission.
We got to flight day 3, and this is an orbital maneuvering system burn that we're doing. You can see it's important to hang on down the mid-deck, having a little bit of fun. And we are going about the business of starting the rendezvous and docking with the International Space Station you see here. On the flight deck, I'm sitting up at the commander's seat, and Steve's up there with me taking some pictures. It gets pretty crowded upstairs when we're doing this. Charlie's helping out with checklists. Andy is photoing out the top window. Wendy's up there with the handheld laser, and Eileen's on the left flying us up to Space Station. Rendezvous and docking went very well. One of the things that we did on this flight that had never been done before was the rendezvous pitch-around maneuver. And this allowed the people aboard the station, John Phillips and Sergei Kriklyov, to take pictures of the orbiter. And so what Eileen's doing here is pitching us 360 degrees, and the station crew members are taking pictures of the exterior of the shuttle. And it was from these pictures that we were actually able to see the gap fillers that we'd remove later on in EVA-3. But as you can see, this is a shot never before seen from our flight, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. So this is what it looked like to the folks aboard the International Space Station. In parallel, this is what it looked like to us on board the Space Shuttle. This is, we're almost all the way through the maneuver now, coming back up to where the space station is going to be directly above us again. You can see it climbing above the tail as it went back up. From there, Eileen flew the twice orbital rate V-bar approach, and we got up to the front of the station. You can see sunset happening here. And we're actually going to dock with that white circle that's right in the middle of the screen. Here's the aft flight deck. If you look out the window directly above Eileen's head on the left there, you can actually see the International Space Station coming down into view. And the next photo is going to show you as we come down into a docking with the docking, we get to a mated configuration.
Probably the next anticipated moment on the flight is hatch opening, certainly for the space station crew. And as Vegas already mentioned, we were joining up with Sergei Krikalev, who just started his cumulative third year in orbit, and John Phillips. And there's Steve coming on board. There are a lot of traditions that are associated with the space station. One is the tradition that we borrow from the Navy, which is being gonged aboard with the ship's bell. Another tradition is right here. It's a Russian tradition, and when you have visitors, you share a piece of bread with them. There's Eileen taking a small slice of bread, and Charlie as well. We had been told by the station flight controllers that John and Sergei were really anticipating our arrival, and you know, as anybody who has house guests, they spend a lot of time cleaning up for us. And I want to tell you, as the person who is in charge of transfer, they did a tremendous job. We're taking you on a little bit of a space station tour right now. We just went through the node, which was nicely organized. We're going through PMA-1, which is the wall of CTBs. Now we're entering into the Russian segment. We're about to enter into the FGB. It's not always easy to translate in space, but you get to do fun things like this. So hold on to your seats as we rotate around. The FGB right now is a little bit of a storage area. You can see a lot of the transfer bags that are stored on the floor. But again, John and Sergei done a great job organizing everything for us. Some areas are small, and so you have a traffic jam. Here's Charlie going high, and our cameraman is going low. And now you're into the service module, which is a great area to hang out. We shared every meal, dinner time that we could with the station crew. And it was a rare opportunity that we had just to hang around for a little bit. You see Sergei and Eileen enjoying a little bit of a break. Those moments were few and far between. And literally, as soon as we got on board the space station, it was time for us to start robotic operations. Vegas and I were the prime space station robotic arm operators. One of the first things we had to do was grapple the boom and hand it off to the shuttle arm, and you saw that maneuver right there. The next flight day, it was time for us to install the MPLM.
Meanwhile, down in the mid-deck, EVA folks are preparing for the first spacewalks. Yes, we are doing very hard, degassing the water bag to make sure it can fill the full volume of the water before the EVA. And make sure I put the pants on before we get out. And you can see the big digital camera floating behind us and waving. That's the sign language in Japanese. Thank you. And Steve Ray is very happy before opening the door. This is a shot from mid-deck that I'm going outside. This is a view from outside that we'll make sure that we are starting the EVA. And the very first task was the demonstration of the on-orbit repair of the TPS. And we'll check the tools one more time before we start the demonstration. The first demonstration was Stevie Ray did crack repair for the RCC. He used the Novax non-oxide adhesive experimental, and that's using a spatula. Steve doing Iron Chef in space. Tastes like peanut butter. And I'm using the tile repair, we call the EVA, emittance wash applicator, using a shoe glue type application to the damaged tile. And this shape we call it a PGT shape. I thought it was representing Japanese island. And both demonstrations were great. And we move on to the fun part of riding the arm, and let Steve Ray describe the ride on the arm.
Riding the arm up and seeing views like this was a great way to spend your first couple hours outside. We spent a little over 20 hours outside, and with the 3 EVAs, and it was just a real pleasure to work with Soichi-san. We're just spacewalk brothers after so many years of training together. This is the helmet cam view of climbing around on the space station. Is what it looks like. And when Soichi's out on the end of the arm carrying that big control moment gyro that he replaced, that's what he looked like. Spectacular view. Here it is being installed in its carrying location back in the payload bay. We brought up a new one and replaced the broken one on station. Soichi is checking his hair. Look at that big vortex pattern in the ground there. The things that you can see while you're doing an EVA are truly wonderful. It was time to, if you look at that little spacewalking guy off the nose of the orbiter, that's EV2 working on moving up to the gap filler. Wendy was flying the arm with Vegas's help. Andy was supervising. We reached out and pulled out those gap fillers that were a little too far forward for us to be comfortable with. And the ground team put together a wonderful plan for us. It worked great. And we were pleased that the gap filler came right out. It's a little red RTV on it. That's the stuff that bonds it together, although not perfectly, obviously. And this is Soichi and I were sort of taking pictures of each other as we came back. And this is what the gap fillers really look like. They're sort of a cardboardy type substance.
Vegas and I got to do some repair work of our own, only indoors. And this was an RCC plug, reinforced carbon-carbon plug demo, where you would actually repair a hole in the leading edge. And this was a carbon silicon carbide produced by Thiokol. Here is John Phillips, Vegas, and Wendy putting in one of the payloads we brought up, which was the HRF rack. And John was very happy to get this because that meant he had a legitimate reason to be on station and do work. Now, the real brains behind transfer was Wendy, of course. We were basically her drones. And Wendy, and thanks to Cindy, did a fantastic job. And really, the best way to transfer this cargo was basically form a conga line. And when you have several people, this is me tossing some bags which were tossed to me out, and this is going back in, going to Andy. Seems to be a little bit overloaded here. Looks like an old Lucy flick, but and then he's passing them off to Wendy, and of course Eileen was the water person that collected all the water. And here Sergey, Vegas, and I are wrestling with that famous ZSR rack, and we're trying to figure out just how does this thing go together and put it all away, and we actually did figure out how to do that and got it in place before we came home, and I'm happy. Wendy did a masterful job also on the arm, like you heard, and her and Vegas both flew the MPLM and put it back in the payload bay, and of course we had a great time visiting our friends and colleagues in space and eating with them and getting to sign the logbook on the International Space Station. Too bad we had to say goodbye. You notice Eileen is at the hatch, and she's making sure we really do get back on the vehicle and come home.
After saying goodbye, we had to go ahead and leave, and this is a view of Discovery undocking from the International Space Station. And one of the really fun parts of the mission, especially for me, flying this, was to do the what's called the undock and fly around. And Eileen and I have switched positions now, and I'm in the aft flight deck flying this, and Charlie's now got the handheld laser. And essentially our job is to fly around, take pictures, and look out the window. So this was several exciting views of the International Space Station. We actually do a complete circle around it, and we take a photographic survey to make sure that we know what the outside of the vehicle looks like. So, and beautiful views of the Earth in the background. And after that, we do a final burn to say goodbye to the space station and start working our way back home.
After we'd undocked and left the station, we had a down day, of course, and we had a wave-off day. That gave us a little time to relax and enjoy the environment. Here you see Steve and Soichi trying to figure out what to do with some EVA batteries, and Vegas expressing his frustration at never becoming a pro footballer. And we, of course, did some serious science, studying the rotation of bodies in free space, much to the consternation of the EVA instructors who own that tool. And Eileen is demonstrating the technique for climbing into the bag and going to sleep each night. Of course, on these flights, exercise is very important. And we kept our commander healthy and allowed her to exercise as necessary. While she was doing that, the rest of us were just pigging out at the galley and having a good time. Some of us got to play with our food, as you see Eileen and myself here, looking at the behavior of this liquid drop and spinning it up to see what would happen. Of course, Soichi watched all this. I don't think he was very impressed. I think at this point he just wished he had a pair of decent chopsticks to catch his food.
Payload bay doors are closing, and yes, it is time to come home. We got an extra day on orbit as we waited for the weather to get better in Florida. Here's Wendy suiting up in the middeck. But we didn't get to come home on the first try as the weather was bad in Florida, so on the second try we did our entry into Edwards Air Force Base in Florida. And you get a look at the displays that we use on the flight deck. Our entry was at night, and in fact we landed about 1 hour before sunrise at Edwards. This is the view looking back out the overhead windows. That's the plasma trail that forms above the shuttle, and you get another view from here. I don't get a chance to turn around and look at this, but our flight deckers in the back get a chance to do that, and I'm glad they filmed that for us. This is from the ground at Edwards. It's an infrared view, which is the heat that you can see that has built up on the outside of Discovery. You can see our nose, the RCC on the nose gets the hottest. This is the pre-flare. We're getting ready to do the landing. The gear is down. And we touched down on runway 22 at Edwards. After some post-landing checklists, we walked off the Astrovan and got a chance to walk around and look at the exterior of Discovery, and we found that it was in absolutely great shape. We got a chance to say hello to our families here who unfortunately were in Florida, but we did get to come back and see them the next day. And that's really a great end to a great flight.